Hello, everybody. Switch that up. So I guess you guys all got the email that I sent out, or the ones that are coming in right now, you got the email, so great. So welcome to summer of 2020. We're going to teach this class 100% online, hopefully mostly synchronously. But I'm going to record all of these. Let me open up my chat window in case you guys are trying to send me messages here. Okay, so if you have video, I prefer that you turn your video on so that I can see you guys, so that we can try to have a real class. And if you have audio, that's fine too. I don't mute people because I want you to be able to ask questions other than just in the chat. You don't have to turn on video if you don't want. You know, if you're not wearing a shirt or in your you're in a weird place. Let's see. Can you see what I'm typing in the chat window there? I didn't spell it all right, but I usually leave my little chat window open at the same time. So if your video is not on and your audio is not on and you didn't ask a question, I may not immediately see that chat window, but I'll try to pay attention to that as we're going. So this is the 4477 class, right? And also 7397. I have 4 graduate students which are taking this class. So at the same time, the graduate students will be doing extra projects. So that's how we'll differentiate that. So it looks like we've got 4, 8, 12, we've got 14 of 32 people. So I think that's pretty good. I assume all of you guys have used Zoom before. Is that true? Everybody here has used Zoom? Either to finish up the previous semester. Anybody, did anybody take any classes? And by the way, can you guys hear me okay? I'm in a computer room. A pseudo computer room, so there might be a little bit of background noise, and if it becomes a problem, I'll put on a microphone headset if I have to later on. But if I sound okay, there's not too much background noise. This is what I'm going to do. Excuse me. So, what have you guys used other than Zoom, if anything? Anybody? You can either say it out loud or. And by the way, for those of you that didn't know, Zoom has a little hand raise. You can literally raise your hand in Zoom. You don't have to do that. You just blurt out your answer. Teams, so that's a Microsoft product, right? So George and Stacy and Amy say they've used Teams. You've used Zoom also. I'm kind of curious, and maybe some of the other people are, what's your experience been with Teams versus Zoom? Is it about the same, better, worse? Zoom is better. Do you want to expound on that, Saad? And by the way, if I pronounce your name wrong, let me know what it is. It looks like that name is Saad. Or Saad.
Yeah, it's Saad. You pronounced it correctly.
Okay. You sounded like a robot just then, but maybe that's my internet. I'm up here at U of H today right now because I wanted a good internet speed. Zoom is a whole lot better. That's good to know. I haven't played with Microsoft Teams. Anybody else have any comments or suggestions or thoughts on Microsoft Teams or anything else? You know, they're not the only 2 products in the world. Although if I was smart, I would have bought stock in the Zoom company back in March. I saw this coming. Okay, so it seems to be the general consensus is Zoom is better. In that case, I'll probably go ahead and stick with Zoom for the whole of summer. I have 3 cousins that work for Microsoft, and they of course push Microsoft products. Oh, Jake, you should use Teams. It's a much better product. But as I've found over the years, and as a lot of you probably know, Microsoft tries to be everything to everybody. It's like buying an all-in-one tool rather than a specific tool like a hammer and a screwdriver and a drill or whatever. Microsoft products try to deliver you an all-in-one tool. And, you get what you pay for. Okay, so 4477, we're going to do this as often as we can synchronously. Now, every once in a while, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and I'm going to do a PowerPoint. I'm going to do a couple of PowerPoints in a minute here. I'm a part-time adjunct professor. Been doing that for many years here at U of H. And that is true. Teams is kind of like Google Drive, although I like Google Drive, by the way, from iPhone. Who is iPhone? So somebody's on their iPhone, but their name is not their name. So by the way, another housekeeping point here. Let's just get all the housekeeping out of the way in the first day or two here. If you're using a nickname in Zoom, I prefer that you use your actual name. So I see a Geronimo and an iPhone. I don't think I have a student named Geronimo. I don't have the roster up in front of me, but I would prefer that you use your actual name if you can change it. So if you can hear me, Geronimo and iPhone, if you're able to change that, you don't have to do it this meeting. You can do it for the next meeting. I don't want you to, excuse me, leave right now. But let's see what else. Okay, so I've been teaching part-time for a long time. My primary job and the thing that I do in the real world is I manage an IT company, a communications. Geronimo is your name. Cool. So excuse me, I wasn't trying to imply. That's why I said if that's your nickname. So that's your first name or your last name? Navarrete. Oh, that name sounds familiar. Do you have a sibling that took a class from me, or is that just a semi-common name? Okay. And then, okay, so iPhone person, you're still iPhone for today, so that's fine. You can say iPhone if you want. I'll just refer to you as iPhone. Oh, Shreya. Okay, I see your name there. Thank you. So you don't have to change it today, but change it another time. So I have a communications company. I'm a turnkey provider. I only have a couple of employees. So basically, I'm on call most of the time. These days, I'm on call 24/7, unfortunately. So what that might mean, there's pros and cons to that. I'll tell you the bad first for you. The bad for you guys, and this isn't necessarily bad, is occasionally, very rarely, hopefully not that often, I may have to not do the class synchronously. In other words, if I was putting out a fire, in quotes, putting out an IT fire, it may end up rolling into the time that we're supposed to have this class, in which case I would have to postpone the class. Now, I can go ahead and do a Zoom meeting and reschedule that and record that, and I'm going to post all of these on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. Actually, I have a couple of channels. If you simply go Google for Prof. Jake on YouTube, excuse me, let me turn I'm in a room where it's on a light timer. Hang on. Okay. I'll have to change that background. That's, of course, what is that behind me, by the way? Can you guys see that? That's the Golden Gate Bridge. I assume that's kind of like Cisco's little icon, little logo is the Golden Gate Bridge. But I need to change that to something better, like U of H kookiness. So as I was saying, occasionally we won't be able to meet synchronously, which of course means less this semester. I suspect several of you, and I've already been emailed this, some of you, this is actually a time conflict, but as long as you are able to do all of the work, we're obviously going to have a lot more projects on your own, not so much. This used to be an in-class project-based and a group project-based class. We can't really do groups. I mean, we sort of can. I'm going to have to try to figure out how to redesign some of these things that we do, like this network game that we play. We do a cable making exercise, which we obviously won't be able to do easily, so I'm going to have to replace those with things. So this semester, meeting asynchronously, as long as you guys can be self-motivated, watch the lectures, you get a lot out of the lectures. We do have a book for this class, but probably, I'd say actually the majority of the useful stuff that you're going to learn comes from me, and that's where the good part of what I do comes in. Being that I've been working in information technology and communications and data and telecom communications for so many years, I have a lot of knowledge and a lot of insight. I'm also a programmer. I took Dr. Parks's classes back in 1980 something or another, many years ago, back when he was a hippie. I guess he still is a hippie. He used to come to class wearing a bandana, had long hair, and you guys can probably guess that. I don't know if how many people in here have had Dr. Parks for anything? I assume most of you. I think you guys have to have at least a couple of classes that are programming type classes before you get to me. So Dr. Park's been here a long time, and Dr. Scammell has been here a long time. I think everybody else is quote unquote new for me, although Dr. Cooper's been here a long time. He was never one of my teachers. So the good news, as I said, or the good part, as I said, is that I bring a wealth of knowledge. And also what I'm going to teach you guys, since I actually work in the industry, I'm going to teach you guys what you need to know to get jobs, what the current trends are, what the current best practices are that companies and organizations are using to manage their network infrastructure, how they deal with employee management, how they deal with security, how they deal with the infrastructure management, the remote management, which is like what we're doing now, the remote access. So this COVID-19 thing that we're having to endure right now has kind of forced everybody into using these technologies, which have actually been around for a long time. So it's really important that you guys pay attention in this class, because like I said, I'm going to teach you things that you're going to need to know either in the job you're in right now or to get a job, because you're going to need to know this telecom, datacom type stuff. I'm assuming most of you, I just glanced at the roster, but I'm assuming that most of you are MIS majors. Not everybody's an MIS major, but that's okay. This is an elective course, but I think it should be mandatory. And I think probably all instructors believe that, but I think for MIS, this course really needs to be mandatory, especially now, since everybody is working at home, since everybody is using data communications. It's not the wave of the future, it's the wave of right now. And it probably, once Corona goes away, this is probably going to be the norm from now on. I'm sure that some of your bosses and some of your friends have already said and been told this is going to be how we conduct business from here on out. It maybe not 100% of the time, but a large majority of what a lot of people are doing are going to be conducting business remotely, sitting at home, not face-to-face anymore. And that's because there are a lot of advantages to doing what we're doing right now. Not just protecting each other from getting sick. I'm coughing a lot, by the way, because I'm drinking coffee and I was up most of the night. I don't have COVID-19. Although when I go out in public and I cough with my mask on, it scares people a little bit, so I have to try to hold it in. Is anybody else worried about that? You go to the grocery store and you're trying to hold a cough in because you got allergies or whatever, but you don't want people to think you're contagious. So kind of scary. So anyway, I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint presentation, which goes over a little bit of the stuff that I already talked about in the intro to me, and what you're going to be learning in this class, what I think is important in the class, how I grade. And then after that one, we'll see if we can get to the official chapter 1, and I'll talk about the book and whether I think the book is necessary. I think it's very important for most of you. There might be but there might be 1 or 2 or 3 of you that could get away with not buying the book and learning all of this on your own, because really none of the stuff I talk about and none of the stuff that's mentioned in the book is unique or new even. It's all stuff that you could Google for and learn on your own. But this is all organized, and this is all, everything that I teach you guys, hopefully, is best practices. I have learned, and my clients have learned through trial and error what works and what doesn't work. Also, since I'm in the industry, since I'm not 100% in academia, I know what the new things are, and I have to keep current. That's the point. I have to keep current because certain things that were valid and certain things that worked 5 years ago, certain procedures, certain methodologies, are not the desirable or the correct procedures anymore. Like RAID 5, for example, is a method to store data on hard drives. We don't use RAID 5 anymore. We use RAID 1 or RAID 10. We do things, or ZFS. We do things a little bit differently. Not everything is solid state drives yet. There are pros and cons to putting things in the cloud. Not everything and not everybody and not every organization puts everything into the cloud, regardless of what you might have been told or believe. There's certain things that don't belong in the cloud because of security issues. So let me turn on this other monitor. I'm going to slide the PowerPoint over and share my other screen, because you don't really need to see me. You need to see the PowerPoint. So give me 1 sec here. Okay. So first of all, do you guys found I have a legacy site, but then I also try to publish, and I'm going to have to update all of that stuff. I am behind a little bit because I've been putting some fires out over the past few days. I'm actually helping a new COVID-19 testing lab come online, and they want to be online next week on Monday. So I'm helping to build the entire IT infrastructure of it. So that's a lot of work, because it's me and basically one other guy doing it. So it's a lot of work, and I apologize for that. But that's okay, because we're going to learn what I'm doing, and we're going to use a little bit of what I'm doing in teaching the class. So bear with me a second. I got the other monitor on. And I'll share the monitor in just a minute. I want to get it up on the screen first. You should never, by the way, and we talk a lot about security throughout the semester, not just for the last third of the class. You should never, when you're remote viewing or sharing a screen, you should never let people see you're logging in, even though it puts asterisks on the screen. Sometimes you make a mistake. How many of you have typed in your password in the name field by mistake and you've exposed your password? I've done it several times because I'm not looking at the screen. I'm looking at the keyboard or I'm looking away. So I always do this. I'm logging in over here on this other screen, then I'll share it. Good best practice. So there's your best practice number one. And some of you might do that already, but if you don't, start doing that. In Blackboard, by the way, you probably have two sections in Blackboard. One of them is the lab section, but I'm only going to post things in the 15074 for those of you that are in 4477, and for those of you that are in 7397 for the 4 grad students, there is only one, excuse me, one section of it. Lost my mouse already. Okay. Okay, can you see the screen I'm sharing? Let me open my chat window again. There are a few things that Zoom needs to improve on, and they've been doing a pretty good job. Okay, so that's the announcement that I sent out earlier. Hopefully everybody saw that announcement. I edited it a couple of times, so you probably got 2 or 3 copies of it because I wanted to make sure that that link was in there. But what I would do if I were you guys is I would come to this Blackboard page. It should be showing up in your Blackboard, and check and see on the announcements page, which should be the first thing to come up, any new announcements. Now, of course, this is all from last semester, and I need to go in and delete all of those from the previous semester. They don't really apply to you guys. It gives you kind of a good idea if you go and look, and these are going to be gone by tonight. So if you want to look at a couple of them now, if they're showing up, you can kind of get a good idea of what are the kind of things that I post. But this one will be static, and this one will always be at the top. I will use the same Zoom meeting ID every time. I don't make different Zoom meeting IDs. 409-331-5253 is my personal meeting ID, 5253. That's one of my telephone numbers, 409-331-JAKE. 5253 is Jake on the phone. And then Go Cougs is my password all the time. I don't think I need to change that. If I post anything, if I save these and post them on YouTube, I'm going to password protect them, and I will also make the password Go Cougs unless I need to change that. Okay, so under content, here's the first intro, PowerPoint. Let's just download this and run it. Hopefully I've got PowerPoint installed on this laptop. I forgot to check, but yeah, it looks like it's there. Give it a moment to chew on that. Oh, here it is on the wrong screen. I think I'm just going to run through it in the edit mode. I think. Let's see if I do a full screen mode. I might try to actually. Let me try to do slideshow on this monitor. Okay, that works. We're good. Okay, so can you guys see my PowerPoint okay? I haven't done this in a couple weeks, so I always have to refresh my memory. Okay, so this is nothing to do with the book. This is my little PowerPoint that I created for the class. It used to be called the Datacom class, by the way, and I've been teaching it on and off since about 1998. But we call it Network and Security Infrastructure now, MIS 4477. Okay, so there's our little outline about me. That's a picture of me on my 50th birthday. Had a little bit to drink that night. So, jake@uh.edu, that's how you contact me. I'm not great about answering email. I'm trying to get better. But that's how you should try to get in touch with me first, jake@uh.edu. Now, you may find occasionally, or you may see occasionally, that you'll get an email from profjake@gmail.com, because that's my Gmail account. You probably won't get mail from jake@uh.edu, but you can send email to jake@uh.edu. Don't bother dialing my office telephone number, because that's the phone number here in this office, and I'm going to rarely be here. You can text me or call me on that number. That's not a real cell phone. That's a Google number, but it comes across on my cell phone. And you can go to my personal website if you want at profshake.com, but I've kind of abandoned that. I haven't been using it much lately. There is some content there, but it's mostly legacy. I've been an adjunct professor, lecturer since 1995. I've been in the information technology business pretty much since I was about 16 years old, so 35 plus years. I've got degrees in computer science and business MIS from University of Houston. Like I said, I've been teaching since 1995 in the College of Business and also over at the College of Computer Science. I taught a programming language called COBOL. Has anybody in here ever heard of COBOL? Hopefully not. If you've heard of COBOL, you're probably close to my age. Interestingly, by the way, COBOL recently came up because during the beginning of the COVID crisis, the state of New York, the state of New Jersey, and a couple of other states were putting out requests. Andrew Cuomo came online and says, hey man, we need, I can't do a very good New York accent, we need COBOL programmers, to come help us out, because they're running programs, the IRS, Social Security, the state unemployment offices are running 35-year-old code written in COBOL, and they haven't upgraded it in a long time, haven't gone to anything new. And I guess that's because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But of course, they were overwhelmed. State agencies have been overwhelmed with the millions of unemployment claims that are getting filed. So back in 1995, we were still teaching COBOL here at University of Houston. I had graduated in 92. Dr. Parks, I guess, liked me. He called me and said, hey, I'm going to be going to, and he might talk about this, or you may have heard this story before. He helped start something called the Heavy Metal Lab at USC in California. It was a joint project between one of the studios there and IBM, and they were touting and using their new OS called OS2, or as I used to call it, OS, half an OS, because it was OS with a slash and then a 2, half an OS. In other words, it was kind of a half-assed OS. Never really went anywhere. But he was gone for a year. He said, hey, do you know anybody that would want to fill in teaching COBOL? I said, sure, I'll teach COBOL. So I started teaching COBOL when I was 29 years old. Got some good stories I'll tell another day about teaching students that were older than me a lot of times. I have taught most of the MIS classes here. I've taught the database classes, the systems analysis and design, the intro class that Emisi teaches. I've taught C. I've taught all of the Dr. Cooper's classes. So when it comes time to doing my exams, by the way, which are all going to be online, or getting projects done, if you try to use any excuses like, well, I got to finish something for Dr. Parks or whatever, you can't lie to me about stuff, because I know what's involved in all of those classes because I've taught them all. But at the same time, also, I can maybe help you a little bit if you need it. My first computer experience was a Radio Shack, which is now gone. They're out of business. Radio Shack. We used to call them Trash 80s, TRS-80. It was a little home computer. Then I got an Apple computer. I'm one of the early Linux, and if you don't know what Linux is, you need to know. You need to know what that is. Most stuff out there, hopefully you guys have heard the term Internet of Things, where everything is connectable or connected to the internet, your TV sets, your smart devices in your homes, most of those things, your refrigerators, most of those things are running some flavor of Linux. By a show of, I can say by a show of hands, by a show of texts, or you actually have the hand raising thing. How many people in here are Apple people, and how many people in here are Android people? In other words, how many people have an Android phone and how many people have an Apple phone? I have, it's kind of funny to see through. I have multiple Android phones. Now, I don't look down on people that use Apple, but there are some fundamental differences, and you'll find in the networking world, in the technical world, you will be more valuable, and there's more to learn and more to know and more to do and more to have fun with on the Linux/Android operating system. Android is based on Linux. Echo, the Amazon Echo, the Google thing, all of those things are based on Linux, the Linux operating system. I helped develop some of the early code, the early networking code back in 1989 or 1990. My 4397 class that I teach, by the way, is heavy Linux. Some of you might be dual enrolled in that. And we're going to be installing Linux operating system and learning Linux. It will be very valuable for you, even if you're not in that class. It will behoove you to learn a little bit about the Linux operating system. I guarantee you, if you put that on the resume, somewhere on your resume, I guarantee you, you'll get a job. Don't just put it on there and not know anything about it, but if you put somewhere on there, I took a Linux class, or I did some Linux research, or I installed a Linux VM in VirtualBox on my Apple, played around with it, I promise you, you will be a much more valuable potential employee or potential hire to customers. I also helped develop something called Network Address Translation, or NAT protocol. I helped develop the methodologies that are used here in the RICS department at U of H. I own a VoIP company, that stands for Voice over IP, network telephone company basically, networking and cloud computing company. I also install camera systems, do all kinds of things, everything that's behind the computer, everything that's in the wall, everything that's floating around in the air, everything that's at a data center. That's what I do. I don't really do desktop or PC support. I hate doing that stuff, but I do it when I have to. Any questions so far? Are we good? Okay, so looks like most of you are Apple people. I'll try not to make fun of you too much. Like I said, there are pros and cons to Apple and Android. Like, for example, and this is true, Androids in the Windows world is much more susceptible because they are open products, basically, even Windows is much more susceptible to malware, to spyware. Apple doesn't share a lot of the hooks into their operating system, so it's more difficult for hackers to write malware and get malware to do anything worth anything on an Apple. But that also works both directions. The EI lab, now this doesn't matter as much for this semester, but the lab component we used to do right here in the EI lab, I'm currently sitting in that blue box right now, in the back of the EI lab. In the fall, hopefully we'll be back here and we'll be able to meet in person in the EI lab, because it is a combination computer workstation lab as well as a data center with servers in it. And this is where we typically meet or typically do all of our work for 4397, my 4397 class. When I used to, okay, there's Melcher Hall, everybody knows. So for those of you that haven't been to U of H yet, you're doing all online classes, there's Melcher Hall. The EI lab, by the way, if you end up dropping the class this summer, which I know a couple of you might have to, this will mean more in the fall. Hopefully we'll be back in the fall. It's right inside the glass doors to the left there, on the left side. When I went to U of H, that's what Melcher Hall looked like. My first time through U of H started in the fall of '82, I think it was, maybe '83. So they took my parking lot away to build this building. It was very sad. That was one of my first computers. There is, and I'm a bit nostalgic. You'll find I like to talk about old stuff, and maybe it's boring to some people, maybe it's not that interesting, but it is good to have some knowledge of some basic history of computing and of networking, because there's a lot, and I'll tell you the most important reason why, other than just to give you a good base of what's going on, is a lot of the terms that we use, like modem, for example. When we're talking about cable modem, the term modem refers to an analog to digital conversion device. A cable modem that you guys use at home possibly is not an analog to digital device, but we still call it a modem because it's taking the conceptual place of what we used to use to connect these old legacy computers to the internet. So, and it stands for something. It's actually short for modulator, demodulator, and we're going to learn what modulation is. You'll learn a bit of tech in this class. So the basic concepts of every computer are still the same. We still have an output device. There's the monitor. We still have a keyboard. There's no mouse here, but mice have actually been around for a long time. That's basically just a specialized keyboard. And then there's my data storage device right there. Yes, that's a cassette tape player. That's what we used to store data on before we had diskettes, and then later on hard disk drives, and then thumb drives, and now we've got Google Drive, and we've got the cloud. So a lot of you probably are using laptops and Microsoft Surfaces and things like that, or Apple notebooks or Chromebook. Anybody have a Chromebook, by the way? You get an instant A if you have a Chromebook. No, I'm kidding, but not really. Because if you have a Chromebook, you're probably going to make an A in this class. No Chromebook people? Okay, that's okay. What was my point, though? My point is that a lot of you are not using local storage anymore. Everything lives in the cloud. At least your data does. Oh, that was my second. I upgraded to an Apple II. So yeah, I was an Apple guy for a little while. This was before the Macintosh. This was the Apple II, and before this was the Apple I. The original Apple I, and Dr. Parks used to have one here somewhere. The box itself was made of wood. And he used to have we had a wooden modem around here somewhere. I don't know what happened to it. I have one of the original modem. Actually, I'll show you that in the next class, one of the original modem devices. But again, the concept is basically the same. There's your input-output device. There's your keyboard. The CPU and stuff is all inside this box. And then that's your diskette drive. I remember having to buy one of those for my Apple. The first one cost me $600 for a diskette drive that held a whopping 187 kilobytes of data, 187K. Most of you have internet speeds that are that faster. So things, you have one, but you're not using one. Are you an old person, Hans? Or not to make fun of you, but or did your dad hand it down to you, or did you find one? There's a neat store, by the way, if anybody really wants to see all of this stuff. There's a store called Alltech. I think it might have two L. It's either one L or two L's. They're actually a metal recycling company, but they also do recycling computers. They're up on Pinemont. And I believe they're open. They're like Pinemont and 290, if you know where that is, or Hempstead Highway. If you walk into their store, they have hundreds of these old computers, Apples, Wangs, all kinds of older computer equipment. Some stuff they recently sold to does anybody watch the series Stranger Things, by the way? Or have you heard of Stranger Things? Stranger Things takes place during the time of a lot of this old equipment. So they have to buy a lot of this stuff to build their sets. So they've bought stuff from Alltech before. I've thrown away a lot of stuff that I wish I had kept. Still need to watch it. Well, you got 3 seasons to watch. I think. Are there 3 seasons? 2 or 3. I just got finished watching Ozark, by the way. Very dark. These are the kind of computer systems that my father used to work on. This is a dumb terminal, and the reason that we call that a dumb, quote unquote, D-U-M-B terminal is because it had the input and the output device part of it. There's the screen, there's keyboard, but there's no CPU in here. It could not do anything without attaching to a CPU, or in this case, a mainframe computer, which is typically in another room. And then our data storage was in the form of tape drives. Now, believe it or not, this equipment that looks like this still exists, is still used, and still operates. You'll find equipment like this at the IRS, at the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, at Social Security Administration. They haven't gotten away from all of it because there is code, computer programming code that was written 30, 40 years ago that has not been, Mr. Robot. I'm going to talk a lot about Mr. Robot, by the way. I watched that series a little while back. I'm done with it. And the first season of Mr. Robot, and I talk about it more in 4397, by the way. First season, all you see him doing is hacking with Kali Linux. It's kind of fun to watch that because they tried really hard to be accurate with their hacking stuff, and they're fairly accurate. Except, boy, those hackers sure can type fast. I consider myself a pretty good, and I was a hacker for a long time. I was what you call a white hat, not a black hat. I didn't do it to make money or bring down countries. I just did it because it was fun to do, and now I do it to help companies go, hey, you've got a big hole in your network. You might want to plug that before some bad guys find it. But the concept is still the same. CPU, screen, and keyboard, input and output. These days, this is more like what modern networking looks like. You guys have a peripheral device, whether that's a computer, a laptop, or a tablet, a cell phone. Everybody has a smart cell phone. Your cell phone is a full-blown computer. It has all of the elements of a computer. It can do everything that most computers can do given the speed of the processor, how much memory. All phones these days, not all, but 99% of phones that are out there are also computers. They have Ethernet ports on the back of them. They're not the old school analog phones anymore. They just look like phones. Their keyboard has been condensed into 0 through 9 and the pound and the star. This is an example. This is a lot of what I have in my data center is a lot of connectivity and a lot of servers. So this would be an example of this data center, and where that guy's standing there. That's an unusual thing, by the way, in a data center. The only time you see a person standing in a data center is when they are upgrading something or fixing something. But usually data centers, this is where all your pictures that you upload to Facebook live, and all your Twitter posts and all your TikToks posting. This data centers are where that data lives. There's not typically people in them unless they're just performing maintenance, as I said. So that's kind of what modern networking and modern communications looks like. So make sure you know these terms. Voice over IP. Here, let me do this. I'm going to open WordPad. Rather than type stuff into the chat window, I will, and this way this will become part of the video. Hang on, sorry, I'm trying to grab some over here. There it is. So if I type something into this window, it'll get into the video. So here's some terms that you need to go Google and look up if you're not familiar with them, or do it anyway, even if you are familiar. So make sure you know what VoIP stands for and why VoIP is a big deal. For one, and I already mentioned Linux. So do a little bit of Googling on Linux, learn a little bit about Linux. Mr. Robot was amazing. I thought it was pretty good. I like that Egyptian dude. What's his name again? I forgot his name. Remy Malik. Yeah, cool dude. Seems like he's stoned all the time, which might be true, but I don't care if he is or not. But anyway, so VoIP and Linux. And I'll add a few more. So about this class, if you're in, as I mentioned before, if you're an MIS major, the content of this course, in my opinion, will be one of the most important and to-the-point classes that you'll take. And that's why I think this class is taught as a 4,000 level class. But again, I don't think it should be an elective, but then you wouldn't have any room to take everything. You're going to learn things that are important and useful in your work. The purpose of this course is to give you, now again, we're just going to scratch the surface. If you really want to be a heavy tech person, you should be at the College of Computer Science or in the iTech College. But I am going to introduce you to some of those elements, like the physical layer, know how to make cables, for example, how to employ filters, how to use things like Wireshark, and do what's called packet sniffing and port scanning. I'm going to tease you with a little bit of that so that you'll feel like you're a hacker, but you won't really be a hacker. You're not going to learn enough in this class, and you're not going to have enough time to become proficient in it. And I'm also going to try to teach it with a quote-unquote management vibe, because this is a management degree. The thing that's really lacking in this world that we live in right now is being able to manage the usage of networking. The most fallible part of a networking system is the people that use the networking system. That's us. Either we are not trained well enough, or we make mistakes. We give away our passwords. We get malware on our computers, or we're fooled into getting malware on our computers or giving away information, or we actually are trying to break the law or do something bad, or we're upset with our girlfriends or whatever. And we break down. Humans break down. Humans are fallible. I'm not saying we should all be replaced by robots, but in terms of managing networks and managing information, the breakdown is us. We're the weakest link in that whole model, in the networking model. The areas covered in this class are going to include network hardware, topologies of networking, protocols such as TCP/IP, HTML, well, not really HTML, but HTTP, anything that ends in a P, FTP, SMTP. The P stands for protocol, by the way. Convergence, voice and video convergence, cloud computing, data communications, as well as migration, and the migration of data into the cloud. Virtualizing platforms. Everything these days is virtualized on the server side, not necessarily the client side, but the server side. We'll talk about virtualization later on. The internet, and this new term, or it's not really that new, and I know a lot of you have heard of this term. It's the IoT. What does IoT stand for? Internet of Things. Microsoft claims they coined that term. We used to just call it the Web of Things, but it's the Internet of Things. One of my cousin's husbands is the head of the Internet of Things for Microsoft. He's not really a tech guy. He has a degree in philosophy, and he sits around and he's an artist. He draws stuff on his tablet all the time, because what he's trying to figure out, what he does is he tries to figure out, what do we do in real life, or what is involved in living and in communication between humans that could be facilitated by the internet, or by communication between electronic devices and humans. So the Internet of Things is taking things that humans are doing, communication, observation tasks that we have to do, and using not necessarily technology, but using the internet to do those things. How many people in here, by the way, have some sort of smart device at home that you talk to other than your cell phone? In other words, how many people have an Amazon Echo or an Echo Dot or one of these, or an Alexa, yeah, or the Google Home Mini, one of those things that you talk to, or your car. A lot of people have cars that they talk to. That's an example of the Internet of Things. Those things don't work at all unless they're attached to the internet. It is a conduit to get your voice or your thoughts, your requests into the internet faster and get the data out of the internet as fast as you can. There is two things, and I talk about this later. Actually, I'll skip that for a minute. I'll get back to that for a minute. Data versus information and the value of data. We're going to learn in this class, we're going to pay a lot of attention to this, the internet model, which is a 5-layer model. There's another model called the OSI, or the Open Systems Interconnect model, which is a 7-layer model. It's a more complex model. If you were going to be a programmer and develop routers and be in the networking world, you'll probably need to learn that 7-layer model if you want to work for Cisco, for example. Or we're going to stick with a simpler 5-layer model. It's easier to manage, and for management purposes, it's a better model to learn. So TCP IP is our dominant network protocol. That's how everything gets to your phone or your computer and gets out of your phone and computer and goes to some server somewhere, using TCP, which is a layer 4 protocol, and IP, which is a layer 3 protocol. That's all that 192.168.0. Some number that's your computer or your phone or your laptop is numbered on your local network at home, or IP version 6, which is a much longer number. We good so far? Everybody happy so far? The lecture's attendance and participation is important. This, of course, it's going to be more difficult to grade based on that. But just for your benefit, you should try to attend as often as you can, synchronously or live, because that gives you the opportunity to ask questions during the class, type things into the chat window there. Do you guys all see each other's chat? Do you all see that, by the way? Or is it just me that sees that? So everybody sees what everybody else is typing? Okay, good. And by the way, if you want to record this on your own, you can. You just have to ask me. You have to request it during the beginning of class. But like I said, I'm going to post all these on YouTube. If you can't attend synchronously all the time, and I don't expect you to, it's going to be a little more difficult. You're going to have to be a more motivated person, and you guys know who you are, whether you're more or less motivated. You'll do better, I think. Most people do better when they're interactive. Most people do better when they're asking questions. I talk a lot. I know I do. So make sure that you're interrupting me. I don't mind being interrupted. Just say, hey, wait a minute. We don't see the screen. Or you're showing us something we don't understand, or we can't hear you. Make sure you let me know. I'm trying to get this information to you because I want to share it with you, share it with the world. Also, I grade based on participation, typically during a face-to-face meeting. That's easier to do. But when it comes down to it at the end of the semester, if you're on the border between a B+ and an A-, or an A- and an A, and I've never seen you attending any of the Zoom meetings, you've never emailed me, or maybe you sent me one email in the beginning, and you are not, and you haven't been communicating in general, you haven't been participating in the experience, I'm less likely to bump you that 1/10 of a point over. But if you're one of these people, and you don't have to be a genius at all of this stuff. But if you're trying, I grade more on if people are trying. I've had people in my 4397 class that, they just, the tech part of it is completely new to them. Like working moms that are coming back into the world, into the working world, that a lot of this is totally foreign to them. For a lot of young people, learning the tech part, I think, is actually a little bit easier because you're born with a phone attached to your head, basically, these days. Or most of you do not remember a time where there wasn't a cell phone in the house. We've been around for a long time, but older people, that's not so much the case. So my point is, show me that you're trying, okay? Have I said that enough? Show me that you're trying. If you don't show me that you're trying and you're on the border between, a C- and a C, or most people don't make grades that badly. I usually only have a couple of C- in a semester, and that's because they just gave up. Or they shouldn't have been in, I don't know how they got to the class. Start with. This is the text of the class. Now, I recommend the ebook version. It's much cheaper. Don't actually go out and buy this book. It's also, keep in mind, it's a little dated. There is a 14th edition, which is not out yet. It's not going to be out till November. So there are a few things in here that are a little bit outdated. It's about 5 years old. That's why I'm going to add more to it. So I recommend it still, because a lot of the foundation of the things that we learn, a lot of the methodologies for management, that stuff hasn't changed so much. The actual technical procedure stuff might have changed. We'll make extensive use of other external sources as well as current events in the news. And this is where I want you guys to help participate. I want you guys to be paying attention to technology in the news, MIS in the news. So if you hear something about a target data breach, for example, or something to do with technology, and I'm not talking about, the latest and greatest Amazon Echo or something like that. I'm talking about where there's a new virus out there, or there's a new scheme going on where hackers are getting data from old people to hack into their Social Security accounts, for example. Or, and it doesn't always have to be bad stuff and negative stuff. Be paying attention to current events, and I'll try to email you guys some popular places to go to and some things to listen to. There's CNN and Amazon and Fox all have these tech briefings that they publish, not daily, but every 3 or 4 days or every week, where they talk about the latest tech news. You as an MIS person need to be staying current and looking at world trends in MIS and Management Information Sciences. Notes for each lecture along with the slide presentations will be available online. So all of this stuff that you're seeing right now, all of the video that I'm generating right now will either be on Blackboard or on YouTube, or a link on Blackboard to go to the YouTube videos. We can't publish, there's too much data in the videos to publish in Blackboard. There are assignments, and I'm going to have to, like I said, for this semester, and it's only through July 3rd. So we only have about a month here. We're going to stick a lot into this semester. So you're going to have assignments that are due pretty much weekly, every Friday. And here's the way I work things, by the way, is we're not going to meet on Fridays, but you'll have assignments that are due Friday at midnight. Now, what some people do is they wait till Friday at 10 p.m. to start doing their assignments. Try not to do that, but at least that'll give you guys the whole week to work on the assignment or assignments, and then they're due Friday at midnight, or sometimes I'll be generous and say they're due Sunday at midnight. But typically, I'm going to be using Friday to do several things, to grade assignments, to answer questions for people that are struggling or having trouble, either technical trouble with trying to complete the assignment, or content-wise, you don't understand how to do the assignment. So Friday is more of an individual day. I might have a Zoom meeting on Friday, but it's not going to be an official class. It's going to be, I'll open my Zoom thing, and then you can come into the chat room as well, and we can discuss the meeting. So it'll be like office hours, basically, a Zoom office hours every Friday. The tests, the exams, we do have 2 exams and a final exam, which is not cumulative. So there's really 3 exams. They're going to be on Blackboard, which I've always done my tests, at least for the past 4 years or so. I have done my tests on Blackboard. So this COVID-19 thing didn't really kick my ass too badly, but I know some of the professors, and maybe some of you guys have experienced this already, it was a big ramp up for them to figure out how to take their exams and turn them into a Blackboard exam. Dr. Cooper, for example, is really, not that he's a smart guy and everything, but he was really struggling with it, or at least complaining a lot about it. Dr. Parks probably had no trouble because he's a tech head like I am. And there are projects. There are projects as well as assignments, but basically those projects, which I'm referring to there, were group projects. They're going to be just basically additional assignments. I'm going to have a couple of extra credit assignments, or I typically have between 5 and 7 things that we do, assignments, 5 of which are mandatory, and 2 to 3 are optional / extra credit. I recommend, of course, that you do them all. It's just going to make you smarter to do these things. We're not going to be able to do the cable making in class because that's a physical thing, and also that's really less important these days. It's fun to do, I think. It's fun to make cable, but these days you guys don't really need cable. You open up your laptop and connect to the Wi-Fi, so you don't need cable anymore. But it's still a very cabled world. Now this may change, especially this semester, but this is essentially the breakdown of the grading. There's 3 exams worth 20% each. There are lab assignments, which is worth 20% of the grade. There's some participation grade, which is worth 20%, but of course that's going to just have to be rolled into those assignments. And I will have some assignments and projects that are out there that are a little bit more complex, possibly requires you to download code on your computer, that will give you as many as 5 extra points on your grade. Actually, probably up to 10. Well, actually, I think last semester I gave up to 8% of extra credit, which is pretty good. I don't do a whole lot of extra credit. Don't really give that out a lot because in my travels of teaching, the only people that typically do the extra credit are the people that don't need it anyway. Don't rely on it. In other words, don't get to the end of the semester and go, oh man, I've been sick, I've been depressed, I've been whatever. You got some extra credit for me to do. If you guys are struggling in class for whatever reason, it doesn't matter what the reason is. Well, I mean, it sort of matters, but if you're struggling for whatever reason, you don't need to personally share what your struggle is, but let me know about it so I know that you're struggling. Well, I'm financially struggling. And again, you don't have to tell me that. Just say, I'm struggling. Struggling with the work, struggling with personal issues that's getting in the way of the class. Email me, call me, text me. Let me know sooner than later. Don't wait till the end of the semester and say, well, I'm sorry I haven't been participating for the last 2 weeks because, my dog died or whatever it is, or I lost my job, or whatever it is. Let me know as soon as that happens. And again, you don't have to be specific. You can just say I've had some personal issues in my life. You can share if you want, but I don't need to know the personal details. I just need to know what you think we can do, or what you think I can help you do to either help you with continuing along with the work, or maybe I might even suggest, well, you might want to drop the class or take an incomplete or something like that. Occasionally I suggest people drop the class early on if they have a challenge that comes up that's going to make it difficult, in my opinion. This is not, in my opinion, I don't think this is an easy class. I don't know what you guys have heard. Some people think it's an easy class, but it's real easy to not do well in this class too if you don't pay attention. So pay attention. It's not a blow-off class. This is important stuff. You've got to participate to do well. That's my grading breakdown there. 92.5 to 100 is an A. There's no A pluses at U of H. My version of an A plus, by the way, is if you're one of these people that does really well and you're applying for a job, put my name down as a personal reference. And if and when they call me, I'll say, oh yeah, Jane or John was a excellent student, did more than they should, or more than I thought they would, and learned a little bit about Linux, learned a little bit about networking. I'll give you a good review or a good interview if you deserved it, if you earned it. If you didn't earn it, I'm not going to give it to you. I try to be fair. So again, this part's not going to really apply this semester. I am going to give you virtual machines, and actually I'm going to upgrade them and make them Windows 10 virtual machines. These are going to be a standalone Windows machine, not standalone, a networked Windows machine that you have admin rights to. It's a machine that you can access in the cloud through something like TeamViewer or VNC or Chrome Remote Desktop. Typically what I had people using is the Citrix Zen Desktop and then installing Chrome Remote Desktop. How many people in here have ever heard of or used Chrome Remote Desktop? Anyone? Not the best one out there, but is the most ubiquitous and the most platform independent one out there. You can run Chrome Remote Desktop on Apple, on PCs, on Android phones, on toasters, anything that can run code, you can run Chrome, excuse me, Chrome Remote Desktop. It's a fairly simple piece of code that lets you remote view a computer, whether that's an actual real, what we call bare metal computer, or a virtual computer that lives in the cloud. Now, the reason we do that for this class is because there are experiments that you need to conduct, or you should conduct, where you are changing things or you're needing to install software. I don't want you to have to install software on your personal computers. Some of you don't have personal computers that are yours. I don't want you to mess up your own personal computers by installing software which may potentially break it, and perform experiments that may possibly break or cause your computer to become disconnected from the internet. So we give you this virtual machine that you can F up all you want, and I can push a button and roll it back to last week in case you screwed up, and rebuild it for you with the push of a button. Not quite the push of a button, but something like that. So that you can conduct all your experiments essentially in what we call a sandbox. Because some of you, in conducting some of these experiments, some of them involve doing things that might end up putting malware or spyware or viruses on your computers. And if it's like I said, if it's a virtual computer, it's essentially protected because it's not real. It's like playing, anybody here play Fortnite or Grand Theft Auto or any of those things? Why do you play Fortnite or Grand Theft Auto? So you can shoot the shit out of everybody and drive and run over prostitutes, but you don't go to jail because it's a virtual environment. It's okay. Well, I don't know if it's okay or not, but it's, in other words, it's a virtual environment. So you don't have to, some psychologists say that those kind of outlets are good for some people, and it prevents people from going and getting in their real car and running over grandma or running over people on the street or shooting people. If they can virtually shoot people and get that anger or aggression out, maybe that's okay. A lot of parents argue the other direction. They say, oh, these virtual shoot 'em up games, or first person shooters as we call them, promote violence. I don't know if they promote violence or not. I was a pretty violent kid without all of that. So I think playing the video games and shooting bits, shooting computerized icons and avatars was safer than ending up shooting actual real people as I got older. I'm not trying to get dark or anything. I'm just saying that's just trying to describe why we're using virtual machines. We do have a Wi-Fi access in the EI lab if and when we ever come back to the school. So we'll do Chrome remote access via, like I said, I'd like you to install Chrome Remote. So for those of you that don't already have a Gmail or a Google account, which I can't imagine none of you don't, but just in case you don't, go apply for a Gmail or a Google account so that we can do some of our experiments. And I'm not asking you to marry yourself to Google, but we'll do some experiments which involve using some of the Google tools. Okay. Of course, this doesn't apply. No food or drink, keeping the lab clean. I can probably skip all of this. Oh, you should sign up for my $43.97 class. It's the Open Systems class, by the way. MIS 439. There's a couple of MIS 4397 classes, but mine's called Open Systems. Make sure that you, if you're looking through the catalog, that you choose that one. If you want to learn anything about Linux, if you want to make more than $60,000 a year right out of college, I recommend that you take that class. You'll be much more valuable, I promise, after you take that class. Right, Rahi? I got a student back in the lab there, ex-student, doing a little bit of work, and I'm sure he will attest to it. Does anybody know Rahi Garamafir? He's in Mu Iota Sigma, or excuse me, MISO. If you're not a member of MISO, I highly recommend you become a member of MISO. Good student organization to become a member of. Here's how to make an A in my class. Complete the homework assignments on time. And I'm pretty generous, usually in the regular sessions about when things are due, but I of course have to accelerate that in the summer. Complete the lab assignments on time. Study for the test. Now my tests, my exams, they're online, but don't let that fool you guys. Just because they're online doesn't mean you can Google all the answers during the test. If you're a really good Googler, maybe, but don't wait to take the test before you look up the answers. I have exam study guides for every single exam that list all the bullet points for everything that I think you should know up to that point. Pre-Google everything, okay? I don't mind if you use Google. And I don't mind if you use Google when you're taking the test. You can use any resource you want when you're taking the exam, except each other. You can't call each other and say, hey, what'd you put for question 5? Or what'd you put for the networking question? First of all, everybody's test looks a little bit different because of the way I design it. But that's to help you. I've had some people say, yeah, I didn't study and I tried to Google everything during the test and got a 45. That's not unheard of. Work together with each other, although we are separated because of COVID-19. If you've got some other friends in class or some other acquaintances in class, or or feel free to have your own Zoom meetings without me. If you want to study for the exam together, if you want to, there's another, by the way, another episodic I've been watching other than Mr. Robot called Community. Has anybody been watching that one? It's a comedy. It's a funny one about a study group going to community college. Yeah, it's a cute little one that's going on right now. Let me make sure this is not a super important call. Occasionally I get some messages I got to look at. Okay, so back to this. Read outside sources pertaining to the material. I've mentioned that before. I'm not the only source for this stuff. The book is not the only source. You need to become a better researcher, and I'm going to try to teach you guys how to do that. The biggest problem, and Google is great. The internet is great. I love that I have that research tool. If we had that research tool when I was your age or when I was working on a bachelor's degree, I would have saved a lot of time going to the library and trying to find things in periodicals, and do a lot of footwork research that I don't have to do physically anymore. I can virtually do it because we have the internet. But that goes both ways too. There is now so much data on the internet, so much information on the internet. There's a lot of noise on the internet. Also, there's a lot of inaccurate data on the internet. Wikipedia, for example, full of inaccuracies. Mostly because people guess on a lot of things, or they edit things, or they're trying to sell something, or they're trying to mislead people intentionally. There's a lot of inaccurate stuff on the internet. Just like in the media, don't believe everything you hear on the media, don't believe everything you read. You've got to learn to become a better researcher and learn how to sift through the crap, the fake stuff. There's a few websites that I recommend that can help you with that. Snopes is one of them. Anybody ever heard of Snopes? This is what I do. That's one of the sites that I use. If I hear something that seems too good to be true, or too bad to be true, or too crazy to be true. Donald Trump has given away, $20,000 to every citizen, or whatever it is. I go to Snopes.com and I look that up to see if anybody has done some research on it, and they claim to be one of the leading sites on actually getting down to the truth of something. Snopes is one of them. So use Snopes, and this is what I tell all my friends older than 50, my parents and all that. When they call me and say, hey, is it true that if I pick up my phone and dial 123, something will happen? Or is it true that if I get this email, that means I'm automatically infected? No, Dad, go to Snopes.com and type in that and see what it tells you. Lately, I've been getting a lot of emails or a lot of texts from friends on Facebook about, well, I don't want Facebook to share my information, so you're supposed to copy and paste this disclaimer. It's all crap. Go to Snopes. And there's others too, like I said, that's just the one I usually go to. Ask a lot of pertinent questions either in class or via email. Email me. I'll try to be better about answering email this semester. I was terrible last semester. Communicate. Make me remember you and participate. Now, how to not make an A in the class or something less than an A, the frowny faces. Wait until the day before an assignment is due to try to complete it, or wait till the day of. Most of my assignments don't take that long, but, and this is especially important because we're doing everything remotely, if you have a tech issue, if you carved out, for Friday from 3 to 5 p.m., I'm going to do this experiment or this assignment I'm supposed to do, and you carve that time out and then your internet is down, or there's a storm outside, or there's a riot going on downtown, or whatever it is, and you're unable to do it during that time, you're going to have to, in other words, don't wait till the last minute to do things. Do the lab assignments on the day they're due, same kind of deal. Wait until you start the test before Googling the answers. Don't do that. Cheat. Please don't cheat. Do the work on your own. Of course, I can't tell a lot of times when you're cheating, but I can tell sometimes. Don't copy and paste data off the internet when you're taking the exam. Retype stuff. It's really easy to tell when somebody copies and pastes things because the font suddenly changes, gets bigger or gets smaller. Or if you're copying and pasting verbatim on the essay questions, stuff off the internet, it's pretty easy for me to use a tool like Turnitin or just Google your answer and I'll find where you copied it from. Here's how to avoid plagiarism. Cite your sources. That two things. Cite your sources in the answers of whether it's an exam or an assignment. Cite your source as well as write it in your own words. Rewrite it in your own words. Not in your own language, but rewrite it in your own words and think about what you're typing in. It'll help you learn it. Pay attention only to the class materials. Again, this is how not to make an A. Abuse the EI lab. You won't be in here. Don't ignore current events. If you ignore current events, and I always ask a question or two on every exam about a current event. Like I might ask a question on the first exam about SpaceX, for example, and you might think, well, what does SpaceX have to do? The SpaceX launch that we just had last weekend with networking. There's stuff. that's involved. We'll learn about that in the next class. Don't ask questions. There are a lot of irrelevant questions. Ask a lot of irrelevant questions. Try not to bring up irrelevant stuff in the class or in emails. If you ask me questions about, what's my opinion about things that don't have anything to do with the class, that's okay if I have time to answer those things, but I don't really have time. In other words, don't be annoying. Try to make it about the class if you're talking to me. Don't use the excuse that I have to study for Parks' exam or Cooper's exam, or I've got to finish this project. I do care, but again, I don't care, because in the real world, you've got multiple things you're dealing with personally and professionally. You got to learn how to juggle them. That sounds terrible, by the way, to any professor when you say, well, I'm sorry I couldn't make it a class yesterday because I had to do something in Parks' class. Well, how is that fair to me? Or why is his class more important than mine? Just because he threatened you more? If you don't do this, you're going to fail my class. It's like, well, I don't know. Doesn't seem fair. Come to class only when you feel like. Try to participate. I know it's going to be difficult during this time, but if you cannot participate synchronously, please go watch the YouTube video. Here's a cool thing about YouTube, and this is what I do a lot of times on YouTube, and some people prefer that. And I risk losing a lot of you if I say this, but you can watch YouTube videos at twice the speed. I wouldn't watch me at twice the speed because I already talk faster, but you can watch me at 125% of the speed and get through the lecture faster if you really wanted to. But anyway, that is pretty much the end of this PowerPoint. So here's some additional notes here. Please let me know as soon as possible if you require any ADA accommodations, like you need extra time on the exams, and you guys know who you are. Okay, if you need extra time or you need ADA accommodations, you know what I'm talking about. Contact me if you can before you miss something, before you miss a deadline for an exam. There is a small window. Actually, it's a large window. I usually give a 2 to 3 day window, 48 to 72 hour window to begin the exam. I only usually give 3 hours once you begin the exam, but I give you a 72-hour window to take it in. But if something happens technically to you, make sure you let me know before you take the exam or during the time you took the exam, rather than me trying to figure out, well, gee, they only completed 20% of the exam. What happened? So I email you and say, oh, well, I lost internet connection last night while I was taking it. Can you help me out here? Let me know when it happens, please, beforehand. Don't let me learn about it afterwards. Don't be afraid to challenge or contradict me. I don't think that I know everything. I might sound like I know everything, and I might sound condescending sometime, but I'm kind of like Neil deGrasse Tyson. The more I want to learn, I want to be wrong sometime. I don't want to be wrong, but I want to learn newer, better ways to do something, because I'm a true scientist. I don't want to know that I'm right. I want to know the right way to do things, or the right way that things work. I don't care if I'm right or not. I just care if it is right or not. You know what I mean? So if you read something that's different, or I said something that's wrong, because occasionally I will get confused and I'll start talking about SMTP when I meant SNMP, for example. Or I'll start talking about VPN when I meant VLAN. There's a lot of stuff in the head here. Say, well, wait a minute, I thought you said VPN was this. Please, feel free to make me look stupid in front of the class. I'm fine with that. Have fun in the class, but please put in the effort, and good luck. And I think you'll do just fine in the class if you pay attention to this first PowerPoint and do all these points. Okay, any questions on that so far? And I have actually, let's go through this real quick. This is a little addendum stuff I stuck on the end here, and I've got some new numbers. But networking. as I said, we used to call this the networking of the datacom class. Networks have evolved from specialized technical to every area of business and every area of home. Everybody has a network in their home now. That wasn't true 5-6 years ago, but everybody's got a network in their home. Everybody's got a network in their pocket, right? Your cell phone. That's your terminal to the world. Could you guys operate without a cell phone? Could you live without a cell phone these days? Anybody? Be difficult. You would certainly have a disadvantage if you did not have a cell phone or some electronic device that connected you to the rest of the world, especially now with COVID-19. Especially if you have COVID-19, how are you supposed to get food? The technology part of studying networks, MIS professionals, that's you guys, hopefully, must have a basic understanding of the underlying tech in order to manage it. And that's why I teach technically. I teach technical jargon, and I'm a tech person, but you need to have a basic understanding of the tech. Don't ignore it. This is a business class, but if you don't understand the techs that you are employing and that you're using to perform the technical functions that you need, you don't know if they're doing it right. You don't know if they're taking advantage of you. You don't know if you're getting value out of them. So you've got to know a little bit. Nobody's going to become a hacker expert. You're not going to become Mr. Robot hacker by taking this class. But you're going to at least know a little bit more about what these guys are. Most of you are going to be in a managerial position where you're hiring or you're making technical recommendations, and you've got to know a little bit about the tech. From a management standpoint, I'm going to teach you guys how you can use networks and communications to perform the management function, employee management, information management, and infrastructure management. That is managing usage of electricity and lights and everything else that organizations consume, everything that organizations create. And then from a strategic standpoint, why are we studying networks? At the corporate level, understanding how to leverage the use of networking and managing the misuse of networking has an impact on the bottom line of the corporation. What can I do with networking and with data that makes my organization more valuable? And I'm talking about things like not just managing real-time information, but data mining. You guys have heard that term, I hope, by now, data mining. Have you guys heard that term, yes or no? Some of you maybe know. Make sure you go Google for or learn what that term is, data mining. Most organizations have been around for a long time. Oil and gas companies have been around a long time. They make extensive use, and the finance companies too, they make extensive use of data mining, and that is they go back and they look at their transactional data from months or weeks or years ago to develop and look at trends in the marketplace, trends in timing, trends in the time of year to determine where they should spend money and where they shouldn't. It helps them decide strategically and monetarily where to go. And some organizations generate millions of transactions per day. Data mining and what's called big data. Big data. Let me make that bigger. Big data is a big deal. Big data is being able to make sense of millions and billions of transactions, to distill that down into a spreadsheet or a pie chart or some meaningful information. We as network managers and as managers in general can't look at millions of transactions and make any sense of that anymore. There's just too much data, and data is being generated at an enormous rate, and it's being generated by your organization at every level. Things that you didn't use to generate data on, like walking in and out of doors, your employees moving around, your employees' temperature now, because we're having to take temperature of employees, medical data, behavioral data, things that we didn't pay attention to before, we're now gathering. And data is really only useful if you do something with it. Transactional data. Useful if you do something with it. The information systems evolution. Let's see, I'm at 3:30 here. I'm going to stop here. We've got just a little bit more to go here on this one. So I guess I won't get to chapter 1, but that's okay. We'll get to chapter 1 in the next class. I wanted to get a lot of this out here in the open because these are terms I want you to look up. These are things I want you to pay attention to. So we've gone from using technology, using computers and networking. Networking's been around a long time. We've gone from standalone systems in the 50s and 60s. We call those mainframe computers. One program running locally. The user was a highly skilled programmer or a highly skilled computer operator. The average employee did not touch a computer, did not get near a computer. They requested information from the computer operator who would then generate a report and give them the numbers. We went from that to host-based systems where we using mainframes running multiple programs with multiple users and terminals. So by the 70s, we were putting those terminals onto the end users' desks and training them a little bit so that they can run programming. And the reason that we were able to do that is the programming got better, got easier. We developed operating systems that were easier to use, like the GUI operating system. By the way, Apple did not invent the GUI. Microsoft did not invent the GUI, the graphical user interface. They both stole it from Wang or Xerox. Xerox actually invented the mouse, and Wang invented the graphical user interface, and they stole or purchased or licensed it. Let's see, intra-organizational, using modems on the above technology. We'll talk about modems later. And then back in the 80s, which was kind of the era of me growing up or me using computers, being a high school / college student, this is where we were using PCs, usually standalone. We would byte all the code and everything lived on that local computer. To then by the 90s, we were integrating, we were connecting those PCs together to share peripherals, share some data. And then beginning in the early 90s to 2000s, we were just beginning to use the internet to share the data. And now today, globally, the environment that we live in is a cloud-based environment for the most part, and a virtualized environment. So you need to know those terms if you don't already know. What is cloud? What is the cloud? Cloud-based networking or cloud-based IT or cloud-based technology. And also, what is virtualization? What is virtualization technology? Go Google those things after class or tonight or tomorrow morning or whatever you want to. I'm going to talk about those throughout the rest of the semester. But these days, everything lives in the cloud. And what is the cloud, first of all? Who can tell me what the cloud is? Anybody watch that movie or heard of that movie, Sex Tape? And I don't mean to sound inappropriate here, but there was a movie that Cameron Diaz and that other weirdo from Canada made called Sex Tape, where they recorded, a married couple recorded themselves in the act, and they decided it would be, well, maybe accidentally they uploaded it to something like a YouTube, or they put it in the cloud. And I remember one line from the movie, I never actually watched it. Oop, there's the thingy again. They give me 1 hour of light. I have to push the button again. They accidentally uploaded this sensitive tape to the cloud, and one of the lines was, well, get it back down out of the cloud. Well, you can't get it out of the cloud, which that part holds true. Once you put something in the cloud, you can't get it out of the cloud because it gets duplicated, triplicated, It's copied a million times by the infrastructure company, by other people. But the cloud is a good thing, good and bad. There's good and bad things about the cloud. The cloud is basically the internet, and it's not just the internet. A lot of companies have their own clouds. It's basically using internet technology to store your data somewhere else where you can touch it, your employees can touch it from anywhere in the world. It doesn't live on just your local hard drive, your local cell phone, your local network. It lives off-site for the purpose of global access. Maybe not to global access to the whole world, but global access for you. I assume everybody's using something like Dropbox, or what do you guys use, by the way? Google Drive, Dropbox, the Apple Cloud, the iCloud. You're all using something like that. And why do you use it? You don't necessarily use it to share videos or photos or code with your friends and your fellow employees. You're using it so you don't have to store it on your iPhone because you don't have enough space on it, or your Android. And like I said, some of you have computers that don't have hard drives anymore in them, or don't even have solid state drives. They have a limited amount of data. But what are some disadvantages to putting things in the cloud? Advantages are you can get to it from anywhere. It gets implicitly backed up because it gets copied a million billion times. But what's some bad stuff? What's some negativity about putting things into the cloud? Security, yeah, that's one. Be more specific, Stacy, or anybody else. And that one should be the most obvious. If you can see it, somebody else can see it too. Even no matter how good your password protection is, somebody can socially engineer that password away from you. Or maybe you just didn't make a good password. Or maybe the infrastructure provider that was providing the cloud service to you got hacked, and they accidentally shared the data, like what happened with Equifax, the Equifax data breach. That happened, I guess it's been about 3 years ago, but we still talk about it. And here's what's interesting about the Equifax data breach. And this, so I'm almost done here with today's class, but the Equifax data breach is, even though it happened about 3 years ago, it is just now starting to cause problems for people. You guys all know who Equifax is? It's one of the 3 credit reporting agencies in the United States. There's Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. If you have a credit card in your pocket, or you have a bank account, or you've bought a car or a house, chances are you have data, sensitive data, your social security, your name, your date of birth, everything that can identify you, stored in that system. Well, they had a data breach about 3 years ago. It was actually an ongoing data breach where bad guys were able to get into the data for months, had backdoors into it for months. And, you know, that involves 60, 70 million credit reports out there. Now, if I'm a bad guy, I might take advantage of some of that immediately, but I may just decide to download and store a lot of that stuff and then use it later or sell it to somebody later. So you might become a victim of the Equifax data breach 5 years from now and not know it. That's what's the most insidious thing about that particular data breach is you don't know that information is stolen. It's not really stolen, it's duplicated. Something that only you knew and only Equifax knew, now somebody else knows, but they're going to hold it and not use it until they want to or need to use it. So it's really insidious. It's kind of like something getting stolen, but you didn't know it was gone until you went to use it. Or you found out, hey, somebody shot somebody with your gun. Really? No, my gun's at home, locked up in a gun safe. Let me go. Oh my God, it's not there anymore. When was the last time you opened the gun safe? I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. It's kind of like that. I didn't know that was gone. So we're going to talk more about the Equifax data breach. Target had a similar data breach. What's the solution? That's a good question, Aline. There's no 100% ironclad solution. What some companies and some organizations do is if they want to protect their data, they don't put it in the cloud. If you go to work for the FBI or the CIA or NSA or any of these security organizations, they do not put stuff in the cloud. You know, you're not allowed to have a Gmail account or whatever. This is why Hillary Clinton got in trouble, by the way, or arguably she didn't get in trouble, because she took a computer home that had sensitive data on it because she wasn't allowed to put it in the cloud, but she did the next best thing. She copied it all down to a local computer and then took it home. But that data didn't necessarily belong to her, because that data was generated while she was a public servant. It's our data. We get to look at it if we want. We'll talk a lot more about that for the rest of the class. So the internet is exploded because of the Internet of Things, by the way, the IoT, and that's where everything is getting connected. And this is why 5G is a good thing. And people, if you're hearing these negative things about 5G frying your brain and all of that, or it's causing COVID-19, that's a lot of crap. That's not what 5G is. The signals that go to our cell phones are much, much weaker than they used to be. You are probably getting more, if you use your microwave oven in your kitchen. How many people like throw some popcorn in there and then stare at it while it's popping? You're putting microwaves into your head by being that close to your microwave oven. That's more dangerous than using your cell phone 24/7 a day. But anyway, because of 5G and because of the cost of internetifying something, I use air quotes a lot. That means we can make everything internet connected. We can make tennis shoes internet connected. Why would we want to make shoes internet connected? Why do we want to give an IP address to tennis shoes or keys? I'm talking about like car keys. Why we want to give an IP address to our car or anything for tracking purposes, for personal use purposes. Very soon, every item that you buy off the grocery store shelf will probably have a tag on it, kind of like an RFID tag, but it'll be an internet tag. Maybe it's for you, maybe it's for tracking purposes, but just in the last 4 years, the internet has grown exponentially. 90% of what the internet is right now didn't exist 4 years ago. In other words, 90% of the internet came about just in the last 4 years because of the Internet of Things and because of the upcoming 5G. It's, in other words, the parabola's going like that, kind of like the COVID-19 parabola. You know, a few people had it and suddenly everybody's got it now. That's what the internet usage is doing, and that is presenting some interesting challenges for us as users of the internet, for us as managers of the information of the internet. It's estimated that on Amazon, for example, 1.3 million items are sold per day on Amazon. So when those items are sold, think of how many transactions are generated. Think of how much data is going back and forth while you're looking at that item before you buy it, and all the stuff that's going on in the background of shipping that item. One item sold on Amazon can generate 2, 3, 4 gigabytes of brand new data in terms of transactions from the time that item sold to the time you received it at your home. So 1.3 million times 4 gigabytes per day, we're talking about zettabytes of new data every single day. And if you don't know what a zettabyte is, you can go look that up. Should be on a separate line, but zettabyte. You probably know what a gigabyte is, or maybe even a terabyte, maybe even a petabyte, P-E-T-A, but do you know what a zettabyte is? That's a quadrillion number. And above zettabyte, we have nanobytes, and we go all the way up to what's called a Google byte, which is a 1 with 99 zeros after it, a Google byte. That's where Google got its name, by the way. So the internet, by the way, used to be primarily the United States because it was more or less developed here by US people. But these days, China and Europe, there's more users in China of the internet because there's more people. than China. USA only makes up about, what would you guess, in terms of users or data on the internet? What percentage do you think USA is at? Take a wild guess, anybody? In the class with that. 70%? No, much lower. What's our population percentage in the world? It's closer to that. About 22%. 22% of the usage of the internet, that is all the new data that's created, the number of users that are using the internet, the USA is responsible for about 22% of that. So that means that the internet and the usage of the Internet of Things is very global. South Korea has the highest, are you talking about per capita? Highest per capita usage, that might be true. That's probable because South Korea is a fairly small, fairly advanced country. It's easier with a smaller country where the people are all homogenous and the culture is homogenous or I would guess that probably Singapore or even a smaller country is more of a user per capita, but that's not unheard of. South Korea, I could believe that. We're almost there. Let's scroll through these last few. These were slides I forgot I added a couple years ago real quick. So let's just scroll through these real quick. Why should businesses use the internet? Well, duh. You've got to. You have to use the internet to, well, for one, get rid of your brick and mortar, which is the most expensive thing that we can do as a company is build buildings and maintain the infrastructure and build and have people running them. Local companies can reach the global market 24/7, whereas they couldn't before with their brick and mortars. And I'm not saying all brick and mortar should go away, by the way. There are certain things we will never be able to do on the internet, like getting a haircut. As we've learned lately with COVID-19, you can't work out. I mean, you can sort of work out, but not really. There's just certain things that can't be replaced by internet stuff. Retailers have to have some sort of a website to be found anymore because there's no such thing as the yellow pages anymore. Companies with multiple locations can centralize and operate as one entity. And it's expected by you, the end user, that a company has a website that you can go to order the products, pay the bill, whatever it is. For your convenience, it's expected. Negatives for the end user, the negatives of the internet. Security is obviously one of the biggest ones. Some things, like I said, we just have to touch, taste, and feel. I made the mistake of buying a vehicle last year on the internet. I will never do that again. It wasn't Carvana, but it was somebody like that. No, never do it again because I should have test driven. I should have physically gotten in the car. It has a funny smell, among other things, and I was not able to smell that smell over the internet. Loss of local personalized service, noise. There's too many choices. Too many stores. Whereas there was 3 or 4 stores in your mall or in your neighborhood, now there's 3,000 or 4,000 stores to buy things from. Reliance, and this is what the issues that we're having now. When your internet goes down or you have internet or connectivity issues, you are dead in the water. Not just as a consumer, but as a company. Most of my small clients, if their internet goes down, they have to send the employees home. Okay, we're done, because they don't have a good backup in place. And then in terms of wasted time, the technology, if technology is too difficult to use or it's too unreliable, it becomes a liability, not an asset. Let's get through that. What can we as MIS managers do? Okay, so somebody asked really early, and this is where I'll end here. What's the solution to these issues? 1, make security your #1 concern. Keep abreast of technological changes. Know your clientele and your employees. In other words, most MIS people need to specialize in certain areas, certain clientele types, certain industries, whether that be finance or medical or retail. Evolve, but remember who you were. Keep an open mind. Don't get stuck on a technology or a system you implemented. This is what a lot of companies do. They spend lots of money or they invest a lot of time developing something, and then they go, oh, look at this thing we built in-house, or this thing we put in place. And then 2 years from now, it's obsolete, but they have trouble letting it go because they're proud of it, or they come to rely on it, and they don't do any research and find out, well, gee, this thing we've been doing for years and years, we could have been doing this other thing that came out last year and saved a lot of money. Got to keep innovating. Things are changing so much lately. Just in the past year, things have changed crazily, because not just because of COVID, but a lot of things. Let's see, wrapping things up just real quick. Sorry, I didn't realize I had added these other slides, so that made this lecture longer. Everything is on the internet now. This is kind of weird to me. And maybe this doesn't hold true for most of you, but I have a Chase bank account, but I rarely ever go to Chase. I rarely ever look at money. We don't need money anymore because we've got our cell phones. In fact, if you go to South Korea or China for that matter, they don't use money. They don't even carry wallets anymore. They just carry a cell phone around, and they use the WePay app. There's WePay, and then there's Alipay, which is the Alibaba version of WePay. Nobody carries money, even bums on the street. Asian bums on the street hold up a QR code. If they scan my QR code for, send me a few you want or whatever, because they know nobody carries cash anymore, but they carry their cell phone on a lanyard around their neck, and they can do WePay with it. So go look up. If you don't know what WePay is, anybody, is somebody who is it WePay or WePay? It's we. Just go Google for Chinese WePay, and also Alipay. They are much bigger than Venmo or what's the other thing that everybody uses? Zelle or PayPal. Much bigger, 8-10 times bigger. So I'm going to stop now because I'm pretty much there. Oh yeah, I mentioned Mr. Robot. Check out Mr. Robot. If you have the USA or Sling, or actually you can watch the first season, I think, for free. It's fun to watch. Go check out Mr. Robot, and it kind of helps you get, thank you, WEE, WePay, like WePay. So I will see you guys on tomorrow. I'll post this on YouTube a little bit later, and I'll send out an email to help you find it. Although, like I said, if you just Google, or if you just search on YouTube for Prof. Jake or MIS4477, you should find my channel. And you can go look at old videos from, March through May for the previous semester if you want to. But they won't be very fun, and they won't be as good, or they won't be as current. If there's not any more questions, I'm going to end now, and I need to get ready for the 4397 class. If you're anybody in here in that class also, if you are, I'm going to end this session and then restart it immediately. So I'm going to end it kicking you out. So you can stay here if you want to, but I think it's going to kick you out, and then you'll have to rejoin. So see you guys tomorrow. If you have any questions, or I went too fast on something, or you're really unsure about what's going on, send me an email, jake@uh.edu. I'll try to answer it tonight. Thanks for participating. Talk to you later. Everybody say bye. You have to wave. You have to wave, Laura. Thank you. Stop sharing.